So I'll take this one. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I would say also dear friends, good afternoon. I am happy to, I am also very honored to. Okay. Is it okay? Okay, now it's okay. I think the problems with mics, it's a bit like we have some challenges with the Eastern Partnership as well. Once more, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Do we have nothing? Because this is not working. Once more. Is it okay? Is it okay?
Depends what you're going to say.
That's a good point. So once more, is it okay now? Yes. It's okay. Okay, so once more, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear friends, good afternoon. I am Andris Spruts. I am a director of Latvian Institute of International Affairs. And I am very glad, happy, and honored to moderate the panel on road from Vilnius to Riga. The previous panels, I think, did a quite good job in already elaborating, outlining some important aspects, what we face, what are the challenges, and what are the windows of opportunities. But being a representative of Latvia, representative of the country which will be hosting the next Eastern Partnership Summit, of course I'm happy to have very happy. It's some kind of standing comedy. Happy to elaborate. This is the last hope. If not, we are done with this summit and civil society conference. Okay, it seems that it's working, so we have good hopes. So, as I said, I think it's good that we are looking forward and that we already elaborated on some of the things, but I think it's not enough, and we can go further to understand what are the expectations, what are the challenges, what are the windows of opportunities. We are meeting in Vilnius, but basically we are thinking of Riga. And not because we are thinking of Riga, that it's a capital of Latvia, which will host next summit, but because we have to think in a forward-looking perspective. It is about next year, about next and a half year, 1.5 years. What are the Eastern Partnerships? So basically it's something wider. It's not just about the summits or organizing summits. What are the thinking of the prospective direction, vision and action within and for the initiative of Eastern Partnership? Even more importantly, when we are speaking of further directions of Eastern Partnership initiative and prospective summits, I think we are speaking of a wider context and a wider issues. It is about developmental, if not to say, and I think it was mentioned here, civilizational choices made by Eastern partners, by our friends. It is about strategic vision and capability of the EU to act and also to attract. It is about interaction between the EU and Russia. At the very end, and I think even more importantly, it is about the future of Europe. How does it look like? And today we have an excellent panel of distinguished speakers, and the number of ministers increased also in the last moment, and I think I'm very happy, and we are happy to have 3 ministers on a panel. We have our host, the Lithuanian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Linas Linkevičius. We have Minister of Foreign Affairs of Moldova and Vice Prime Minister Natalia German. We have Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia, Maya Panjikidze. And we have a number of very good, knowledgeable, critical, I hope, experts as well. Vladimir Sokor, Research Fellow, Jamestown Foundation. Alexander Doleba, a Research Director in Slovak Foreign Policy Association. Wojciech Kononchuk, sorry for looking at your pronunciation, Head of Department for Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova in Center for East European Studies, or
Eastern Studies.
Studies, okay, Poland. And we have Hrant Kostnyan, who is a CEPS Research Fellow, Center for European Policy Studies. Yeah, okay. And I will start, Minister, with you. The first question, I think you as a host you are the best placed to answering that one. Is Vilnius Summit a good starting point or a good basis to look into the future to the Riga Summit? What are the achievements? What are the challenges? What kind of basis it has established for the further developments? Please, the floor is yours.
Let me first welcome all representatives of civil society once again in this interesting debate. We met also yesterday, but we see that we sometimes need governmental assistance in order to be heard, right? So it's really important. And when it comes to the Vilnius, it's not a start, by the way. We took over from something what was started in Prague, in Warsaw. It's not Lithuanian invention. We just continued. And Riga also will not be the end of the game, I have no doubt. Now I can tell it's really something which should last until it's necessary. And what we do in Vilnius, as I already said in other formats, to take stock, to learn lessons, and to go ahead. It's a very important message from Vilnius to go ahead, to continue. Europe must continue investing into Eastern Partnership Program because of all these countries. And my friends and Maya and Natalia are here. We spent a lot of time discussing these issues, and when they went through very difficult processes, both of them, those who are present here. And in Moldova, they had governmental crisis, but they overcame this crisis and didn't lose any single day in the negotiations, accomplished it in negotiations, then followed by Georgia. This is easy to say, but it's not easy even to initial. Almost 1,000 pages were signed this morning by Natalia and other friends, but such a huge work was preceded before. So let's take stock what happened, and happened a lot of wonderful things. We can be proud about that. And those who are trying to pretend that, you know, it's disappointment, yes, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed because of Ukraine, but look, it's because I'm in Vilnius, and with all respect to Riga, I would like that in Vilnius we would fix some steps, you know, but okay, they will be done because the process has some meaning and quality, and we made it. All these countries got closer to Europe. That's the main message. And this is, nobody can deny that. We can see that because of the public opinion, because of activeness of civil society in the streets and squares in Kiev. And if we will not do that tomorrow, by the way, I'm saying this very strangely because I don't know, maybe we can do that tomorrow still. But if not, it will come. So most important thing, let's draw a positive, so to say, mood. Let's draw something and let's be proud of what was done. Let's respect these investments which were done. Because there's a lot of people were investing into this and working, including civil society. Without civil society, I will repeat, it's impossible to rely on continuity, on irreversibility, on ownership on whatever. Because politicians can decide whatever, but due to the beauty of democracy, they're changing. And if civil society will not be behind, will not share this, what we are doing, that will not be continued. So my point that Vilnius is not the start, because we started before, and Riga also will not be the end.
Okay. Thanks. I immediately am tempted to ask some couple of questions, but just one at the moment, Minister, to you. We sometimes, when you look into the future, we expect that, and this already was discussed, we expect that we might think about a membership carrot. What would be Lithuanian position in this? Would you be willing to support in some time that there would be the membership carrot to the Eastern partners, and it would be more positive than even now?
I shouldn't say carrot. What I do say, we do care about European project. We like it. We would like to inform about this. We would like to talk about this. We will never impose or forcefully introduce something. We will show. We can show our example. We can show our lessons learned. And Latvia can do that, and Lithuania definitely can do that, explaining how we went through. By the way, it was also not very easy way, as we all know. There were blockade, there were intimidations, there were empty streets, as I said, without cars, because no fuel, no gas. We remember that. Cold houses during winter time. We went through that, but it was motivation, consolidated general opinion of our civilian society, first of all, not just politicians. Everyone were behind, and we went through. So my message to those who are feeling, I feel, disappointed, or who feeling that it's something lost opportunity, it's partly true. I'm really here to say that this is could be a lost opportunity. But let's be optimists, and let's continue. And I believe that's the main message.
Okay, Minister, thanks. I think we'll come back to this. Ms. German, so my question would be about Moldova. What is, and Moldova, certainly, and also Georgia has been, you can say, the success stories here in Eastern Partnership. And what are the future expectations for 2014, for 2015? Again, keeping in mind that in 1.5 year time we meet again. So what are those expectations, goals, what Moldova, Georgia as well would like to promote in a context of Eastern Partnership during this time span?
Thank you. I would also like to start by greeting the distinguished participants, many of whom I was very honored to host in Moldova, in Chisinau, in October this year, when for the very first time the Republic of Moldova hosted the Civil Society Forum of the European Union and Eastern Partnership. And I was very pleased to be able to pass the torch of Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum to Maya, to my dear friend, the Georgian Foreign Minister, who will be having all of you as guests next year in Tbilisi. And this is indeed very symbolical, because from the territory of EU member states, you are slowly going on into the region where we belong, and we take the ownership. And for this I am extremely grateful, because the recommendations that we have together with you formulated in Chisinau would serve as a very important input to tomorrow's Eastern Partnership Summit that is taking place in beautiful Vilnius. And I would also like to thank very much Linas and the team from the Lithuanian administration for organizing the Civil Society Forum together with us for the first time in partnership with an Eastern Partnership country outside of the territory of the European Union. That was an absolute premiere. And I think we have a very good way ahead with that. I also wanted to share with you the very good, fresh news, because today in the morning in the Lithuanian Foreign Ministry, we have initialed, as you, Mr. Moderator, rightly pointed out, almost 1,000 pages of EU-Moldova Association Agreement and Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Area. And this is, of course, no small achievement in itself, because it crowns very hard work of the teams of Moldovan and EU negotiators that took place in the last 3.5 years. And it does symbolizes the relationship of trust, openness, cooperation, and also that kind of perspective and forward-looking feeling which is the topic of our today's panel. And for us, 2014 and 15, as we look forward towards the Riga summit of Eastern Partnership, would be marked first and foremost, of course, by the signature of this important agreement, which I hope will take place very soon in 2014, and putting the provisions of the agreement and the DCFTA into provisional implementation. This is very important because after the Lisbon Treaty, European Union can start implementing the agreements with partner countries in proportion of almost 90% of the contents of the agreement, meaning that we will of course spare no effort in the Republic of Moldova and start implementing it the sooner the better and in a very committed manner. It does coincide of course with the political calendar priorities in my country, because next year is the election year in the Republic of Moldova. So we aim to sign the agreement before the campaign and also to ratify it in the by the present composition of the Moldovan Parliament. We coordinated this timeline with the European Union colleagues, and it seems to be very realistic and very feasible indeed. So by the time we approach the Riga summit, we will be in full-fledged effort of the implementation of the association agreement and DCFTA, while the national EU parliaments will be ratifying the agreement. And we very much hope that this process will not take a very long time and will be completed by 2015 timeline of the summit. The second track, where we are working very hard indeed, is the track of mobility for the citizens of Moldova in a well-managed and secure manner. And you probably noticed yesterday's announcement by the European Commission that the European Commission formally and officially recommends the Council of the European Union member states and the European Parliament to endorse the recommendation of the Commission to lift the visas for the Moldovan citizens for short stay travel onto the European Union. In practical terms, it means that next year, particularly the first semester of next year, will be the time when the finalization of this decision-making process will be fulfilled, and we very much hope that the Member States and the European Parliament, before it starts the campaign for the elections into the European Parliament for next time, will be able to endorse this positive recommendation of the European Commission. And that means that we will start implementing it, well, hopefully in the second semester of 2014. And that important progress on the track of mobility is also a constituent part of the Eastern Partnership. And obviously it is relevant for Moldova, but it is just as relevant for other countries as well. Some of Eastern partners are in the action plan implementation, like we just finished with it. Some of us are in the visa facilitation arrangements with the EU. But what I really want to finalize with is actually the question that you posed to Linus at the end, because for us, the real meaningful period of time between Vilnius and Riga would mean the contouring of the European perspective of those countries from the Eastern Partnership who are eligible, who are committed, and who by the effort to reform themselves and to align themselves with the EU norms and standards would like to have the membership perspective as the objective of their own European integration process. And here, of course, I mean my own country, the Republic of Moldova. And by this, I would also like to encourage very much the Eastern Partnership to develop in the way of differentiating between the partners and applying the principles of more for more. So the more you reform yourself, the more support you get. Political, economic, in the sector, cooperation, financial, and all other sorts. So I think if we look into Riga summit being guided by these principles, we all will be quite successful on that way. Thank you.
Okay, Minister, thank you. Ms. Panjakidze.
The same question, right?
The same question, a little bit just in a different way. Does Georgia differ in its expectations from Moldova? Or pretty much the same?
First of all, let me also start with thanking you for the invitation to this Civil Society Forum, which is my second forum after I participated in the forum in Moldova, and I'm proud that the next forum will take place in Tbilisi in 2014. Because from the very beginning of the European integration, civil society was in Georgia a very active actor in the process of integration, in the process of working on association agreement. And it was involved from the very beginning because we understand how important the role of civil society is in the development of democracy, the development of society, and strengthening the democratic institutions. I can repeat everything what Natalia said. It's almost the same. There is just one difference. We already had our elections. We had the first peaceful transfer of power 2012 after the parliamentary elections in Georgia. And now we had the presidential elections a month ago, and the new elected president is here in Vilnius, which is a big achievement because the elections have been prized by all international institutions as democratic, as fair and free, and well administrated, and we are very much proud to be in Vilnius after such successful elections. The majority of Georgian population supports the European idea. More than 80% in the last presidential elections voted for Western-oriented parties, the Georgian Dream and the United National Movement, and the parties with more Russian or other orientation did not have any chance to achieve a significant result during the elections. We expect to sign the agreement in September 2014. We expect the support of European Union on this way from today to the signature of the agreement, because we understand that the pressure will be increased from some other countries, and the year from today to the September 2014 will not be easy. We expect also that the progress achieved by Georgia will be adequately reflected in the declaration, which we will have tomorrow after the Vilnius summit, and especially the progress in visa liberalization action plan, because this is something what's very practical for the citizens of Georgia because of mobility, because of freedom of movement and so on. And this is one of the most important parts of our work during the last 3 years. We also expect that after we will sign the agreement in September, we can start the provisional application, and the DCFTA becomes effective in Georgia. And of course, the Article 49 is one of the most important articles for us too, and we hope that the European perspective will be opened for Georgia, and we will get more for more. So I can just repeat everything what Natalia said. This is the same approach, and once again, the European way is the choice of Georgian people, backed by all political parties or the majority of political parties. And we hope that after Vilnius, this way becomes irreversible for Georgia, and we will achieve our final goal, not only political association and economic integration into the European Union, but a membership, which is not realistic maybe today, but after some years we hope to achieve this goal too.
Excellent. Thank you, Minister. Again, I would still be tempted to ask a short question, which I don't think that can give us short answers, but anyways, I would ask to both ministers. You are a success stories. You've done really a good job, great job, and I think also this summit reflects a mutual understanding of this. And I think also domestically, if you look, there is political elite in society which is very European, or there is very strong European element or a European leaning. At the same time, both success stories have some challenges. One challenge is, we know it was discussed in the previous panel, frozen conflicts or occupied territories by outside powers or by outside power. You might also define it like this. But also domestic political challenges. Ms. Panjakinze mentioned about elections just what happened in Georgia. In Moldova, elections are coming next year. We sometimes speak, or sometimes there is a mentioning of selective justice or instability. How would you see, is there anything domestically which can also influence or challenge this European road, success story which can be continued in 2014 and 2015? But please, I would really kindly ask to answer shortly, if it's possible.
In the case of the Republic of Moldova, there is obviously a very clear political challenge towards the European course of the country that comes from the opposition, from the Communist Party of the Republic of Moldova, that is now clearly and quite openly advocating for a different way of the country's development, which is the integration of the country into the customs union and in future Eurasian Union. So this is the project that originates in the East. And the campaign is being done obviously in favor of that particular model of the country's development. However, the majority of the Moldovan people have spoken at least 3 times in the last 3 years, because we had to organize early elections, not because we like it very much, but because of some provisions of our constitution in the country. And for each time, the majority of the people were electing the pro-European democratic parties that were formed different coalitions, pro-European coalitions, and our current present coalition is composed of 3 political parties that are clearly advocating in favor of European integration of the Republic of Moldova and the reform process based on EU values, standards and norms. We will have to work very hard continuously, not only doing the reforms or, as it were, the homework that is required and is absolutely necessary to transform and modernize the country, but we will also have to work even harder in the electoral year to actually explain and articulate the stages, the parameters, and the benefits of the European integration for the country. We, of course, are very encouraged by the support and the good examples that do exist in the European Union in this particular sense, particularly in countries of Central Eastern Europe and in the Baltic countries too. We look into how Lithuania made the campaign while Lithuania was in the accession process, how Latvia, Estonia, Slovakia did it, and we are actually now taking over and implementing the Slovak Convention on European Integration model in the context of the Republic of Moldova, which is very efficient indeed. It takes a lot of skills, it takes a lot of commitment, it takes a lot of learning, but it's a mission worth doing, and I'm sure we will be successful on that way.
Thank you, Minister. Ms. Panjakinze.
You mentioned frozen conflicts. It's a big problem for Georgia because 20% of the country is occupied by Russia, and Russia recognizes 2 regions of Georgia as independent states. But the European integration we see as a tool for reunification of the country because it will make the country attractive for everybody. And we hope very much that the pressure I mentioned will not disturb the plans of Georgia on the way of European integration. You wanted a short answer.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Minister. Vladimir, I'm proceeding to you. There was mentioned about Eurasian Union, Customs Union. The geopolitics somehow come into the picture as well. Would you say that Ukraine and the rest of the Eastern partners can become or are the hostages of this geopolitical competition in area?
If they become anybody's hostages, they would be Russia's hostages, not ours. But I see the challenges in a somewhat different order, and I would like to highlight them proceeding geographically from Azerbaijan westward all the way to Belarus to highlight the main challenges. On the road from Vilnius to Riga, Eastern Partnership will undoubtedly approach its partners in a more differentiated way. That means differentiated expectations about their performance according to the various countries' historical and present circumstances, and a more differentiated offer, more closely attuned to the specific needs of each partner country. If you take the case of Azerbaijan, the Eastern Partnership, Azerbaijan, a strategic energy partner of the European Union, the Eastern Partnership Program is almost irrelevant from Azerbaijan's perspective. Azerbaijan has definite expectations from Eastern Partnership. They are minimalist and still unfulfilled. For example, recognizing Azerbaijan's territorial integrity in the association agreement in the same way in which Georgia's and Moldova's territorial integrity are recognized. Face up to the humanitarian challenge of 800,000 Azerbaijani internally displaced persons, a humanitarian problem completely ignored in the West and in the European Union. These are Azerbaijan's real concerns. If such concerns are addressed, then, and only then, would democracy and human rights concerns be received more flexibly in Baku. Without addressing the larger challenges, mere criticism on human rights and democracy grounds lacks credibility from Baku's perspective. Moving on to Armenia. Yes, Armenia has been practically abducted, I should say, from the Eastern Partnership Program by Russia. But it is important to recognize that Armenia's decision has met with a cross-party political consensus among political forces and even among most of civil society. We had Mr. Sakuns from Armenia sitting here in the morning session in the audience. I would like to give him credit. He was one of the very, very rare civic society leaders who publicly protested against the Armenian government's allowing itself without objection to be abducted into the Eurasian construct of Vladimir Putin. It is unfortunately a matter of cross-party consensus in Armenia, and it is dictated by considerations related to Karabakh, Russia being the guarantor of Armenia's gains on the ground at the expense of Azerbaijan. Moving on to Georgia. Georgia's Western orientation, which brought it to the threshold of initialing and signing the association agreement. That Western orientation is the legacy of the Saakashvili administration. It was that administration that implemented the necessary reforms, and it was that administration that shaped the public national consensus in Georgia about the Western orientation through 9 years of relentless daily messaging to the population that Georgia's destiny is in Europe. The new government under Mr. Bidzina Ivanishvili has adopted, embraced that orientation. It can continue building on it. It has this enormous opportunity of continuing to build on the Saakashvili legacy. This opportunity would be at risk if the new government continues to pursue the politics of vendetta against members of the former government. And this needs to be watched closely in the run-up to the signing of the association agreement. It is none other than perhaps the most prominent victim of persecution, former Prime Minister, current General Secretary of the UN, Mvano Mirablishvili, sitting in jail, who said from his jail cell, that the signing of the association agreement should not be made hostage to his own personal fate or to the issue of political persecution.
How generous.
This is a statesman-like position. Hopefully, the government will heed it. About DCFTA, there is a seldom recognized challenge regarding DCFTA. DCFTA favors investment, whether in Georgia or Moldova or in other countries, not only and not necessarily by European investors, but by non-European investors as well. And there is a distinct risk that Russian investors could rush to Georgia or to Moldova or to other countries and snap up companies ahead of European investors, attracted by the opportunities to export goods to European markets. We have to be watchful about that. And no government should, Georgian or Moldovan, no government should adopt a laissez-faire approach to such a prospect. And finally, on Georgia, we need a more reliable, long-term presence on the ground by the European Union monitoring mission on the demarcation line. Its mandate should be renewed at intervals longer than 1 year, and those prolongations should be guaranteed. I will skip over Moldova because Madam Minister German covered Moldova as ably as she did. I'll say a few words.
Vladimir, please, shortly.
About Ukraine.
Because I think we should move ahead, yes.
Just a couple of words about Ukraine.
Couple of words.
We have suffered a serious defeat in Ukraine. Various feel-good events that may be staged will console us for a few days, but not for longer. The challenge now is to, first of all, damage limitation. And I see the damage limitation necessity in avoiding a situation in which the European agenda becomes a divisive political partisan issue in Ukraine instead of becoming a unifying issue. Until quite recently, the Ukrainian democratic opposition had almost a monopoly, politically speaking, in terms of internal political developments, almost a monopoly on the European agenda. Mr. Yanukovych and his team jumped on board, practically demonopolized that issue. Had Mr. Yanukovych persisted with that, it would have had a very strong chance of being re-elected in 2015. He has not done that. We now face the danger that the opposition could re-monopolize the European agenda issue, but we have to avoid deep rifts in Ukrainian society, which Russia could exploit very effectively until 2015. So the two sides of society should attempt to reconcile around a consensus European agenda. And finally, the final point of my East-West journey, Belarus. The policy of isolation and sanctions has not worked. The president of our host country, Mrs. Dalia Grybauskaite, and many others have pointed out repeatedly sanctions and isolation are not only ineffective, but counterproductive. It would be wrong to think that Belarus has no options. It has options. They are bad. The Russia option and the Eurasia option. They are bad. We should not encourage the Belarusian authorities to exercise those options, and we should really seek to reach out to the incumbent authorities. We can never win if we do not work with those who hold decision-making powers. Access to the decision makers and decision-making powers is key to winning in a geopolitical competition. Thank you.
Thank you, Vladimir. I think you gave some food for thought, and certainly we can elaborate in detail later on. Let's proceed to Alexander. Slovakian transition model and integration model was also mentioned by the ministers. And how you would see, is the Slovak transition and integration experience and model has been really adopted by the Eastern partners? How you see how successful it has happened?
Okay, maybe a few words about Slovakia. I'm very happy that Madam Minister already mentioned the project which my institute is running in partnership with Moldovan partners, is National Convention on EU in Moldova. Then I will refer on that project in Ukraine, because actually there are two different, lessons we learned now in Moldova and in Ukraine, unfortunately. This is the case. We launched the project in Slovakia. This is really the Slovak sort of know-how when during the accession process, the EU idea became the key idea for the modernization of the country. But it's not just about for very sort of close of cycle of political class, but if you look at the structure of the society, and having in mind that it is a very complex institution, okay, farmers are not interested in foreign policy of the EU, etc., etc. And this the idea of the project is to create sectoral communities, EU communities, because you can have a talk to farmers via the EU agriculture policy. So they simply should become a sort of stakeholders of the policy, okay? The second, very important, is the partnership between the government and those non-governmental sectorial communities. So this EU debate is brought closer to the sectoral communities, the easiest for them is to understand what the EU is and what is the idea of the modernization of the country. This is the project above. Now lessons learned. So in Moldova, it's really quite successful project. We have rather limited sources. Slovak ODA, Slovakia is not the biggest country in the European Union, but still actually 70 million euros we pay on annual basis to development assistance. Most of it goes on multilateral level to UN, EU, OECD, etc. But still we have bilateral assistance. It's about 5 million a year. 1/5 of this sum goes to Eastern Partnership since 2004. So we counted, the statistics, 2009, 2012 is 1/5 directed to the Eastern Partnership countries. National Convention in Ukraine. We launched it in 2010. Final sort of plenary session we hold on 11 November. It's interesting that high-ranking officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it happened just a few days ago, Ministry of Economy, other ministries in Ukraine sitting with us there. So the working groups elaborated excellent, sort of policy recommendation on specific sectoral issues, how to move. 60 Slovak experts participating during this 3-year, project. So something has been implemented. And I got frustrated when I actually, got this information that Ukrainian government decided not to sign. And this, what that means for Slovakia, for domestic discourse. Yes, we have domestic consensus that this is our foreign policy interest, we want to assist, we want to help. We want to support this European integration process. But now the question is, if Ukraine, because actually the idea was to expand the project once Ukrainians will sign the accession agreement and they will start to implement it. So the most relevant assistance, the more relevant assistance we can deliver when they will start to implement it. But now, actually, there is a discourse, should stop simply, to work this way with Ukraine, because if you do not have the government, which can be a partner, the open government, which is open also to the civil society in its country, you cannot work in this way. So this is a discussion we have today. Maybe this is very brief of Slovakia, maybe just one remark concerning the Riga, because we were invited just to think what is the most important, this Vilnius-Riga period for Eastern Partnership. So my understanding, the crucial issue for the EU is the recalibration, because actually all we understand that after Vilnius we have to recalibrate the policy, and the problematic issue and the problem are those countries who are not able to engage with the EU with this contractual process on association agreement. What will be new agreement between EU and Armenia about without the CFTA? How we can work now, because let me explain, this is very important momentum for the EU. EU is a legalistic project. We can work together if we have the goal to achieve some contractual deal that the rules are clear, the provisions agreed, we can simply move ahead. And this is the consensus. These are 28 countries which should have a consensus on the content of the agreement. And actually, what sort of agreement we can offer, those countries who are not able to engage on the CFTA? This is the big issue. My idea is just, I would like to raise it for the discussion, maybe we can elaborate more on within the discussion, is to use sort of the scheme we have already in the shape of the ENP Plus proposal, this is German proposal of 2007, to go via sectoral agreements. I will stop here, and if there's interest, we can proceed in this.
Excellent, Alexander. Thanks. So we proceed to Wojciech. We discussed already that Poland is an important player, one of the driving forces also behind the Eastern Partnership. What kind of concrete proposals, offers for next years you as an expert are putting on the table of Foreign Minister and Prime Minister of Poland? Because Poland might also influence things. What you would see also as an expert, important steps, concrete steps in Eastern Partnership in the coming years up to Riga? Please, Wojciech.
Thank you. I'm not a diplomat, so I will speak as a Polish expert from Polish point of view, and I think that we in Poland have maybe better understanding what's going on in Eastern Europe than our Western colleagues. I think that the most important thing is to have a good diagnosis what's going on in Eastern Partnership countries. So therefore, I would like to share with you my, let's say, understanding, my assessment of 4 years of Eastern Partnership. Basically, I think that unfortunately Eastern Partnership show just limited ability to influence its member states. It's clear that EAP is not an instrument which could bring quick results in forms of modernization, Europeization, bringing Eastern Partnership countries closer to Europe. And we have it in mind that we were not able to create effective instrument of changes, internal changes in the members state. And to understand the whole picture, I think that we have to acknowledge that there is a huge gap between expectation from both sides. We have different as the EU, and member states countries have different also. Of course, there are different countries among EAP members, but nevertheless, I think and I believe that to understand the EAP countries' approach, we have to understand the logic and way of thinking of their elites. And such true is that they are mostly interested in defending their positions. Implementing transformation along EU model could generate high political cost and at the same time undermining the position of the ruling groups in these countries. I think that the problem is that what is important in the situation is that the ultimate goal of the whole process, of the process of integration of EAP countries with Europe, is not defined. What is the direction they are going? Full membership, economic integration, similar models, or maybe some other? So I think it's one of the crucial issues to understand why not everything is as we would like to see it. Maybe the best example of this case is Ukraine, and especially what recently happened in Kiev. The Ukrainian ruling elite fear, as I understand, that the difficult reforms that the association agreement requires could destabilize the economic situation, but also to some extent the social situation. As a positive effect of EAP would be felt only in the longer term. We have to bear it in mind that in a short and middle term, the CFTA, especially economic part of EAP, will have negative influence on economies of EAP countries. So therefore, the best choice from Ukrainian government point of view is to maintain the current model of the state and the economy, and to postpone to some other future necessary reforms. So therefore, all countries which are involved are, maybe not all, but majority of them. There are some exclusions, Moldova probably, to some extent also Georgia. But nevertheless, countries involved, majority of the countries involved in the program are mainly interested in maintaining, the ruling elites who govern the countries are mainly interested in maintaining political dialogue with the EU rather than achieving real progress in modernization and Europeization of the country. So again, a huge gap between expectations from both sides. And as a result, unfortunately, we as the EU were not able to present ourselves to create an effective instrument to changing situation in these countries. And we failed to be an agent of changes in these countries. And my last sentence, what is probably worth in the situation is that it is unlikely that that it will change soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It seems that ministers will have to leave. All the ministers will have to leave?
Half of them.
Also half of them. 1.5 or... Grant, if I may a bit postpone your presentation because, or your remarks, and we'll come to it on this positive sum game, I think I will ask you. Just let's immediately have a little bit improvise, but since I want to have a bit of interaction, not just among ourselves, but also with the audience, please, audience, I will take one round of 3-4 short questions, not comments, short questions, to two ministers, Linas Linkevičius, who has to leave, and also to Natalia German, who has to leave. I take one round of questions. Yeah, please. Yes, here, over there. Yes, please. Yeah. Over there.
Thank you very much. Ian Bond from the Centre for European Reform. A quick question to Minister German. One of the obvious ways in which Russia can make life difficult over the coming year is in relation to Transnistria. What would you like to see the European Union doing to help to inoculate Moldova against that sort of pressure?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There was a question. Yes, please.
Thank you. Sergei Kabanadze from GRAS. To Minister German, what are the leverages that Russia can use against Moldova in the next year, maybe more, to make sure that the Moldova's path reverses? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There was a question. Yes?
Leverage.
I will not make any comment because the civil society is just for asking questions. So, two questions I have to the minister before leaving. Now, of course, we are in a very difficult position. Let me be very realistic. This is a failure of the 4 years, let's say, endeavors after, and even more after the initiation of the neighborhood policy. What to do now further? Or to just expect now the civil societies that will force the governments and so on and so forth to change the position, or to initiate a new way of thinking within the European Union. And this, okay, I will not prolong with this discussion. What is your opinion? One. The second question, what to do now with Russia and with all these integration processes that are going on? Tomorrow they can include China, I don't know. Who knows what is the form of this integration? Should the European Union, as we proposed for 3 years, develop a strategy concerning Russia, a strategy concerning all this integration and other ambitions, probably of the government in Moscow, who knows, but they exist, or we should just listen, follow what is going on. And of course, it's impossible to accept the standpoint inserted in the preparatory position document from Brussels, or to be included with us, or to be outside. Okay, these two questions, not to prolong.
Okay, thank you. Please, ministers, so the final remarks, and also please try to address the questions asked by the audience.
Thank you very much. So to dear friend Yain, great to see you again. On Transnistria and the pressure that comes from Russia, a very short answer would be for the European Union to really assist us start implementing the provisions of the association agreement and, most importantly, deepen comprehensive free trade area on the whole territory of the Republic of Moldova, obviously including the Transnistrian region. We did what was possible to do while negotiating the agreement. As chief negotiator on behalf of my government, I actually made a point of inviting the representatives of the Transnistrian administration to each round of the DCFTA negotiations that I was holding with the European Union. And they always came. They came to each round, be it in Brussels or in Chisinau, so they are very well aware of what is it about and what it entails. And there is a big interest from the business community in the Transnistrian region to embrace DCFTA, actually, because the
proportion of foreign trade of the Transnistrian region right now is 38% with the European Union already, and this without DCFTA started to be implemented in the Republic of Moldova. We have done a very important thing. We have extended together with the EU the provisions of autonomous trade preferences, trade regime, for the enterprises in the Transnistrian region until the 1st of January 2016, just to embrace it slowly and to prepare the region for the implementation of the DCFTA, just as the right bank, Moldova, would be doing. And this is just one way. The decision on visa liberalization is another instrument that could be used successfully to reunify the country, because we are not isolating anybody from that important decision. All the citizens of Moldova who hold biometrical passports will be benefiting from it, including those living in the Transnistrian region. Sector cooperation area, energy, transport, health, you name it. These are the real instruments of Moldova's European integration and cooperation with the EU that we would have to extend on the whole territory of the country, including Transnistria. And European integration is the best and the most pragmatic and efficient way to reintegrate the country. We continue to believe in that. Russia's leverage on Moldova, not only on Moldova, on many countries from our region, they can extend from the influence to be exercised through the negotiation frameworks for our unresolved conflicts, where Russia still participates, the file of energy, migration, trade. And in trade, of course, you know what happened recently, and so the rejection of Moldovan wine exports to the Russian market. All that, of course, can be used and probably is being used already, and we are very well aware of that. However, we continue to believe that a European Moldova implementing the free trade and association with the European Union is a much more attractive partner in the eyes of everybody with whom we deal and with whom we trade, including the Russian Federation. And I am absolutely sure one day this understanding will start to be a norm, because as for the European Union, for us this is not a zero-sum game. We would like to trade with the East and with the West and cooperate and remain a reliable partner. And I'm sure that there is enough understanding and commitment in the Republic of Moldova to resist whatever challenge might come from within or from outside of the country. This is how we are going to proceed. And again, a recommendation for the civil society. You are the agents of change. And in my country, you were the game changer back in 2009 when the civil society and the students went out to the streets and ensured the transfer of power by not a fraudulous, by a democratic, open and transparent manner. And we continue to cooperate with the civil society very actively in the Republic of Moldova. We count on you and we listen carefully to you, because without the civil society, whatever reforms, whatever transformations we are undertaking, we know it would never be sustainable. So with that, I would like to actually thank you very much for the invitation and wish you the best of luck for the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Yes, and unfortunately, I also have to go, so maybe very briefly, what we should do. Frankly speaking, let's do what is doable. And if we'll apply this, suggest the strategy, so let's put the strategy from strategy level to the kitchen table. And let's really implement what means more for more, what my colleagues said. That means let's respect self-differentiation, because countries are different, expectations are different. We really should be able and should put mechanisms, set mechanisms in order to implement what is decided on strategic level. Also, it's not enough to respect their choice. It also has to do with the values. We have to defend this, so to say, choice. And since it's not easy, and the pressure, I believe, will not decrease, unfortunately, so it's not just their business, it's also our business. It has to do with our credibility, and this is very important to realize to everyone. And I believe the progress is here, also visible. I can tell that it's not a big secret. This issue was not very popular, let's say, half a year ago. And when we were discussing maybe some countries, also representatives here, we were active in the discussions, some others were listening more. Now more and more colleagues are involved, sharing this ownership. And by the way, because of this pressure, we consolidated our, so to say, forces. So let's be consistent. We are not always consistent. Sometimes we're not consistent ourselves. Let's draw some lessons from the experience so far. And we will be condemned for the bright future.
Condemned for the bright future. Thank you, Minister, with that positive remark. I think we can thank you to the ministers, and because ministers are here. Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Oh, this evening.
Okay, we continue our on-stage Q&A session, and last but not least, Grant, sorry for keeping you a little bit to wait, but I think everything good comes. It was mentioned that we should not look at the competition in the post-Soviet space as some kind of zero-sum game. And you have been arguing that actually there is a potential for positive-sum game. Give us your arguments, please, why there is this potential for positive-sum game.
Thank you, Andres. Three very small points before I answer to your question. First, there were multiple problems that I found in Mr. Sokor's speech. I cannot react on all of them, but one I think I should. First, Mr. Sokor suggests differentiation across the Eastern Partnership countries, and then he proposes to have a unified EU position towards the conflicts without taking into consideration their peculiarities. I think there's a serious flaw in the logic there somewhere. Secondly, I think the fact that Ukraine and Armenia will not sign or initiate the agreements should not be cause for disillusion from the parts of the European Union. One look at the streets of Kiev and all across the country shows that this was not the choice of the people, but the rulers who are still far away from becoming a statesman that's putting the needs and the interests of their people above their own. Secondly, in the European Union, we will see in upcoming year a number of changes, new parliament, new commission, but I think despite the number of internal priorities, there will always be time for the Eastern Partnership, and I'm very glad that the leadership will move from here, from Vilnius to Riga, and I'm confident that Latvian authorities will build on a hard work conducted here in Lithuania in cooperation with the European Commission and the European External Action Service. Now, let me address the Russia issue. I think that there is no point for the EU to engage in the geopolitical warfare with Russia. I think there's not even a benefit from defeating Russia in such a zero-sum game. I think the EU strategy should be based on containment of Russia through engagement, as far as that engagement does not contradict the values and the principles of the Eastern Partnership. As it stands today, Russia is excluded from the processes because primarily its own desire. However, this has to be addressed. The issue of engaging Russia has to be addressed. It's very important to communicate with Russian people and the elite that Eastern Partnership, successful Eastern Partnership, is not only beneficial for the Eastern partners, European Union, but also for Russia. Even more, Russia will benefit much more if Russia itself follows the good example of some Eastern Partnership countries, such as Georgia and Moldova, and it starts its own association agreement and deep and comprehensive free trade area negotiations with the European Union. There is no question that there has been an enormous pressure exerted from Russia on the Eastern Partnership countries. I think Yanukovych and Sarkisyan would be very happy to know that we were sitting here and excessively criticizing Russia. But I think the pressure from Russia is not the only independent variable that caused such a decision to abandon association process. There are other factors that we have to take into consideration, and those are undemocratic, corrupt, and authoritarian nature of the politics in these countries and the oligarchic nature of their economies. So therefore, this has to be the focus from the side of the European Union. Let me say also that we already know, given the experience that the Eastern Partnership has, that the presidents or the prime ministers in the Eastern Partnership countries are not the real partners of the European Union. It's the civil society, and there has to be more extensive work done. European Commission, with the leadership of the Commissioner Füle, has done a lot, and this has to be continued systematically and consistently. The more civil society organizations, trade unions, businesses, and grassroots initiatives are involved, the greater will be the sense of ownership of the European perspective for those countries. Let me conclude by saying that as we move past Vilnius summit, it is time for us to realize that the success of the Eastern Partnership should not be measured by the quantities of the documents signed, but by the qualities of the reforms implemented in the Eastern Partnership countries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hrant. And we have 20 minutes for the Q&A session, and please, I am giving the floor to the audience. Please introduce yourself, and I would also kindly ask to address one of the speakers to whom you are exactly addressing, or identify to whom you are addressing your question. Please, I can see here. Probably I can take from this side 3 in one round, and then on this side.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Marge Martisalu, and I'm from Estonian Center of Eastern Partnership. Just a short question to Minister Panjikitsa. As the implementation, as the implementation of the agreement hopefully will start next year, will be the main challenge, and also in a way one of the main litmus tests for the Eastern Partnership in general. How do you see, what are the way forward in engaging of communicating the association agreement and DCFTA related matters to the civil society? What are the concrete steps or challenges? How do you see, how to involve more the civil society while communicating the challenges and benefits related to the association agreement and DCFTA? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Let's take some other questions. Yes, over there at the end, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Elena Kristolova, professor of the University of Kent. Thank you to all the panelists. I very much enjoyed all your comments. Hrant, the question actually to you, because I particularly enjoyed the very last commentary. And I absolutely agree with you. It is important to re-engage with Russia, basically moving away from decoupling, moving towards recoupling. But then the big question is how? And I would actually welcome some comments from the panel to see how it might be possible, how it could be done, because after all, there is absolutely no consensus, as you might know, within the, between the institutions and particularly between the Commission and also External Action Service. There is absolutely no idea what to do and how to do with Russia, to deal with Russia. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, another one. Yes? The panel, did you hear the questions?
No.
No?
I could not hear it.
The Hrant.
Oh. Thank you, Elena, for the question.
So you heard?
Sorry?
Good. You heard?
Yes, we had.
You heard?
We heard, yes. Oh, I thought you could.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay.
And also, Ms. Panjikitsa.
The first question was frozen conflicts and implementation of the CFTA. And the second, how to engage with Russia.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you for the question, Yelena. I think this is the biggest challenge that it stands today. I think right now we are in the center, in the process of thinking what can be done in this sense. But there are two things that I can say on top of my head that could be a starting point. First, there's a EU-Russia dialogue, there's a EU-Russia summit, and I think you can have a chapter in this strategic partnership dealing with the shared neighborhood. I think the biggest problem is that EU and Russia don't talk much about the Eastern Partnership, the shared neighborhood, and this has to happen. So there's a space there to use. Another option could be the Eastern Partnership has not only bilateral but also multilateral framework. I think within multilateral framework, which does not include the association agreement, deep and comprehensive free trade area, I think Russia could be invited to some of the multilateral platforms as an observer to understand that the discussions that are taking place under the Eastern Partnership are not against Russia. But actually, those are discussions from which not only partner countries, Eastern partners, can learn from each other and the EU, but maybe something is there also for Russia to learn.
Thank you.
Okay,
Alexander?
maybe one sentence to this question, how to engage Russia. It should be very technical, sort of, way of engagement. And I see some opportunities when it comes to the discussions about the EU acquis, because what is the core of the European integration? It is the common legislation, it is the common acquis communautaire. Let me just illustrate. The EU, on annual basis, adopts its average numbers from 6,000 to 8,000 norms. These are new norms, annually. Our parliament, as a parliament of the member state of the EU, adopts annually up to 1,000. So I would say just 1/8 of the Slovak legislation, which is due in my country, comes from the national authorities, and you have enormous amount of legislation, new legislation on annual basis. And if you look at the EU enlargement process, you can see that the biggest problem, and even we see it in the Eastern Partnership, what divides Europe is the EU with the existing common acquis communautaire and the rest of Europe, which has a different set of rules. And the EU enlargement actually and the European project, if one thinks in serious terms and just, in this sort of legislative way, both normative and legislative way, is the acquis communautaire. I do not see a problem on technical level to start debate about the future acquis, not about the existing. No compromise can be done between the EU and those who want to join the project about the existing acquis. It's the rules of the club, and you should accept or not. But if we are serious, and we know that we have more than 30 sectoral policies, that 150 working groups within the Council are working on daily basis on the new legislation, why not to have a discussion about the future EU acquis, which does not divide us, okay? This is very technical sort of proposal, but I think it might work somehow, so it's just idea to be discussed and, more, should be more elaborated, but just as an idea for eventual engagement with all European nations. They are interested in the project, not the existing acquis, no discussion, but let's have discussed the future acquis.
Yes, just a short comment in regards to that we should talk more with Russia about Eastern Partnership countries. Basically, I agree that we should talk about this with Russia, but I really doubt that it will bring any result. Phil and Minister Bildt, both they said today that if Ukraine would sign and implement association agreement, including the CFTA, it would also benefit Russia. Very quickly, we received the response from the head of Russian Foreign Policy Committee from Russian State Duma. Mr. Pushkov used just one word to comment it: смешно, silly. He called statement from Commissioner Phil and Minister Bildt that it's silly. So again, it would be very, very, if possible, difficult to discuss with Russia the question of European integration of Eastern Europe, of Eastern Partnership countries. And I also believe that we should not agree to accept Russian-Ukrainian proposal to create a trilateral commission, as what was proposed at the same time by Putin and Yanukovych. It's unacceptable. It's our program, it's our initiative, not Russian. So I hope that there would not be an agreement from any European EU countries for this Russian proposal?
Thank you, Vladimir. And then
To the question of whether or how to engage Russia, Radek Sikorski and Carl Bildt told us this morning that there is no shortage of engaging and talking to Russia. They told us this morning that there is an enormous amount of engaging and talking to Russia by the European Union collectively and regularly, as well as by the major European Union member countries. That's not what's missing. And the advocates of talking to Russia, engaging Russia, suggest a number of talking points which are a guaranteed failure to Russia. For example, the talking point, it's in your interest, Russia, to have stable neighbors on your borders. But Russia's whole foreign policy paradigm is instability in neighboring countries. That's the basis of Russian foreign policy. Control the instability in the neighboring countries. It makes no sense to tell them that it's their own interest to have stability. Or the other talking point, it's in your interest, Russia, that your neighbors should be integrated with the European Union because then you can export and invest more in these neighboring countries. But we don't want that. We want to reorient the economies of these neighboring countries towards the West in order to minimize dependence on Russia. Whenever we tell Russia these things, that it's in your interest to do what we suggest, the Russians will not only disbelieve it, but will be confirmed in their paranoid view that we are being perfidious and trying to mislead them. So this is all guaranteed failure. As to including Eastern Partnership on the agenda of EU-Russia talks or inviting Russia into some Eastern Partnership forums, this would be completely unacceptable because it would inevitably involve a Russian voice immediately and possibly even a veto down the road on the European Union's own decisions vis-à-vis its eastern neighbors. Russia's top priority goal in Europe at this stage is to enter in some form or another, informally, formally, into the decision-making processes of the EU and NATO. And attracting Russia into EU forums with European partners would be a channel for involving Russia in our own decision-making. Completely unacceptable, especially since Russia is the sponsor country of frozen conflicts against our partners in the East, of ethnic cleansing against our partners in the East. Russia does not simply qualify for such a role.
Okay, thank you. Minister, do you have a chance to
I
reflect on things or what also the panelists
No,
said,
I would
or
like to make
exactly
some
more
connect.
precisely on association agreement
The
implementation?
question was, if I correctly understood, what will bring the association agreement and DCFTA to the country?
Yeah, obviously there are some challenges
So
in the
the
process of
DCFTA is the
implementation.
most practical part of the association agreement, which will give the Georgian economy the possibility of development. Because Georgian capital, Georgian products, Georgian services can enter the European market when the DCFTA will be in force and the market will be open for Georgian economy and trade. And what we will achieve with that is the same level of development of our economy and trade like in the European Union. And this is the benefit from the CFTA, as I understand. And we will start the provisional application of the CFTA very soon after the signing of the agreement, and this will bring more prosperity for our country. This is our hope. On Russia, I already spoke about the pressure which we experience from Russia, but we always ask our partners in their bilateral and multilateral communication with Russia to keep the Georgian issue top on the agenda of their bilateral and multilateral talks, and to explain to Russia that the European integration of Georgia is not against Russia, and it's better for them to have a stable and prosperous neighbors in the south as they have it in the north with Baltic states. But before I end, let me also shortly comment some words of Mr. Sokor. I know that it's very difficult to change his mind. I tried to make it in Trakai a year ago, and I was not very much successful, I guess. But when I say that the European integration and the Euro-Atlantic integration is the choice of the Georgian people, these are not the empty words. And our first contacts with the European Union, Georgia had already in 1996, long before Saakashvili. And also, Georgia participated in NATO operations, for example, in Kosovo, long before Saakashvili. We built on what Saakashvili's government did, and we accomplished the work on association agreement in the last year. And let me put one rhetoric question. The Saakashvili government, and I know that you are a big friend of Saakashvili and his government, was not able to manage free and fair democratic elections last year. And Ivanishvili, whom you call a Russian oligarch, was able to make it.
No.
Not today, but this
Never.
is okay.
Never.
Good. If never, then it's good.
Okay, so we are having some agreement also, solving disagreements also on our stage. Are there some urging last questions for the panel? Yes, I would take a couple of, and I think we would conclude with this. Yeah, please. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Anahit Ghazanjan. I represent Hafer International Armenian branch office. I'm development professional for more than 20 years in development, and also I'm a representative of civil society. I wanted everyone to go back to the question of this panel, which is moving from Vilnius to Riga, right? So we have how many? We have 2 years. And I dare, just because of my some experience and maybe age, I dare to propose one thing. It is very important that we never be thinking that we are perfect, okay? The same thing refers to European Union. Pride goes before fall. That is why I wanted, and I would propose that European Union and all these distinguished guests, the brilliant minds and brains, let us revisit again. We have 2 years, okay? Let us revisit the how to market this product that is called Eastern Partnership, okay? And then present it in a new package in such appealing and attractive way that there is no one, either Putin or somebody, could keep people from forcing going not in this way.
Okay.
This is my just belief that we need to revisit our own way how we present things.
Okay.
I can bring examples.
The question is about the remarketing or necessity of remarketing the Eastern Partnership, actually to Europe, to the Eastern partners, to own societies. Please, here the question is, and I believe I will take the last one over there. Yeah.
Спасибо большое. Я могу по-русски задать вопрос, да?
Ну, можете,
Да. Спасибо большое. Татьяна Зилко, Беларусь, Союз белорусских пенсионеров «Наше поколение». У меня 2 вопроса. Я вот, правда, жалко, что господин Винкович ушел. Я услышала из его уст, что санкции не сработали и надо что-то вот менять. Правильно я поняла, что Евросоюз, руководство Восточного партнерства собирается снять санкции с нашего белорусского руководства? Это первый вопрос. Еще, значит, наверное, ни для кого не секрет, что в нашей стране белорусское руководство – это один индивидуум, который что скажет, то все повторяют. Так и еще, неужели Европа... Я понимаю, что мы сами виноваты, но, к сожалению, в такие условия мы поставлены. Неужели Европа думает, что если с нашей верхушки снять санкции, и они смогут, более вольготно жить, потому что все-таки им где-то щемит, что они не могут выехать в Европу. Это для них много. Вы думаете, что у нас вдруг станет наш руководитель, повернет свою голову к какому-то там, какой-то демократизации общества?
Спасибо. Я думаю, что это вопрос Владимиру, потому что Владимир говорил про Беларусь, что более мягко может уже относиться, если я понял правильно. So we come back to this one. So I would take the last one, please.
Hello, Thomas Oldham from Electoral Reform International Services in the UK. It's been a really good debate. Thank you all. I would like to put a hypothetical situation to the panel and think outside the box a little bit. There's been a lot of talk of zero-sum game, and I feel there's also a lot of us and them politics coming from Russia, but also from the EU, and obviously the EU couches it in very diplomatic terms, and I've never suggested that there's us and them politics going on in the Eastern Partnership. But what is there a potential maybe for a Eurasian Union, not including Russia, not including Europe, the EU, a union in which the Europe and Russia both give it support, give it organizational support to become its own union and its own success story, rather than continually pushing the boundary of the European Union, which seems to be causing a lot of issues, certainly in Western Europe and here in the Eastern Partnership.
Okay, thank you. And in a reverse order, 10 seconds each. I know that it's very challenging, but since we're running out of time, please, Hrant.
Yeah, I agree that there has to be a new communication strategy, that people in the Eastern Partnership countries learn what Eastern Partnership is. And also, this goes not only for the capitals, where people more or less have heard what is association agreement, but also about the regions. Of course, I have to say that there's a difference across the countries on this. On Belarus, I think EU line is clear. Sanctions will be lifted when the political prisoners are freed and rehabilitated. I think that's the official line, as far as I understand now. On Eurasian Union, we have conducted a large study on the Eurasian Union in December last year at Center for European Policy Studies, and what we found does not look promising. So I don't think that this entity is sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, two points. Eastern Partnership. I think that Eastern Partnership is not as effective as you would like it to be. So we have to try to make it more attractive, especially for the elites. I don't know how to do it, honestly speaking, but elites from EAP countries are the key for any modernization and Europeanization process. So we have to somehow engage the elites, but at the same time, of course, we have to work with the societies. Societies are also extremely important for changing the situation. And should comment on the situation in Belarus. I would not call it sanctions against Belarus. I would call it restrictive measures. We don't have a fully fledged European Union sanction vis-à-vis Belarus. Of course, even those restrictive measures are probably painful for part of the elite, but nevertheless, just restrictive measure. There is no discussion about, not discussion about economic sanctions, and probably I would not expect also that that EU is going to introduce more harsh policy towards Belarus.
Thanks, Alexander.
So very briefly, when it comes to the Eastern Partnership, the key task I see for the EU is to have a clear understanding what the new contract for Armenia should be about without DCFTA. This is the key issue, because this was the core of the offer. Now we can see that some countries will be not able to engage. So this is, we should elaborate on that, what that means for the EU's relations with them and how to develop the relationship. It is not about the problem of communication of the Eastern Partnership and the EU into the public in the partner countries. It's about the quality of the governments in the partner countries, how much open they will be. It's not about to educate the people. The best way of education is the participation. I mean that citizens of those countries should become stakeholders of the policies. The government should work together with them. So, and this is how you will develop that, so that people will feel, yes, we are part of the process, that this is our project. So this is the only way. And Euro-Asian Union, we discussed it yesterday, Kazakhstan is not ready to go, beyond the economic cooperation within the Euro-Asian Union. So it might be declared, but it will be something different that we have it in the European Union. So I'm rather skeptical when it comes to the declaration and implementation.
Thank you, Vladimir. Thank you, Alexander. Vladimir, please.
The Eastern partners are very different historically from their immediate neighbors to the West, who are the newest members of the European Union. There is a historic fault line, and we have to have patience for the Eastern partners to be able in time to cross that fault line. So we have to carefully take into account the historical and current characteristics of each of the Eastern partner countries. They will naturally ask, in a more materialistic way than their neighbors to the West, what's in it for us? What's on the table? And we have to show something tangible on the table, not necessarily billions of euros in credits or assistance, but something tangible. Like somebody said, Wojciech, I think, good governance. Assistance for increasing, raising capacity of governments. Thirdly, do not mix up opposition activities, political opposition activities, and civil society activities. Keep them separate. And do not mix up Eastern Partnership Program with the nostalgia for the color revolution regime change efforts of 10 years ago, because that time is past, and keep that in mind, not only with Belarus, but also with Ukraine. And work with decision makers. They are key to success.
Thank you, Vladimir. Minister, on behalf of the ministerial bloc here.
We are very much interested in the success of Eastern Partnership for all 6 countries. We were disappointed when we learned that Armenia left the club and then Ukraine. And only 2 countries, Moldova and Georgia, will celebrate tomorrow their success. But let's see it that way. Now 3 countries are ready after tomorrow's initial link for signing the agreement: Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova. This is half of Eastern Partnership countries. And I hope very much that the others will join the club again, because we see the association agreement with DCFTA as a master plan for the Europeanization of our country, and we wish the other countries the same. It's their own choice, of course, which way they will go, but we believe that this is the best way for Georgia, and we would be happy if the other countries would see the European future as the best way for them too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Shortly to conclude, I think some mission has been accomplished. Some success story we experience here also in Vilnius summit. Let's hope there will be also success story of Riga summit as a Latvia. I'm also, of course, very much expect and hope for this. I think there is still mission possible to be achieved next year as well by signing association agreements and also moving closer with Ukraine. And not only, I think there is mission impossible to some extent about the membership prospects for your countries, Eastern partners, but I think let's hope that at one moment it might also be the mission possible. We have all to do the homework, Eastern partners, what can still do, but I think it's also about the Europeans. We have also our own homework in many regards, and also to communicate and to remarket and also to have the strong will, because as it was said, if you have a will, you have a way to find way forward as well. And with this, I'm concluding. Certainly, the communication, as you see, there are some challenges in this audience, but at the end, I think we come to the good conclusions. Thank you to the audience for the questions and to the speakers for their contributions. And please join me in a last round of applause. Thank you.